You found the skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey YouTube, the Dapper Dinosaur here. I am coming at you today with an outside of normal schedule speculative evolution video. Today we have 5 species to look at, and so let's just get right into it right away. First up today we have Amphora. In a still lagoon, a patch of Amphora soaks up the sunlight. Creature designed by Dapper Dino. While Numos had little in the way of body plan besides terminal buds and a vascular system that grew fractally, Amphora has managed to develop a radial body plan with buds no longer growing terminally but from the center. The buds are also permanent unless eaten, and when part of the organism is eaten, it can regenerate. Also, the buds are narrower but taller towards the center, allowing for maximum volume. The buds, like in Numos, generate and release spores. Under the surface of the mat-like structure, vascular tissue transports fluid, sugar, proteins, etc., and connect all the buds to each other. The buds also release hormones into the connective tissue of the organism, and these hormones are the signal for when and how big and how tall new buds need to be. Except in unusual cases where the mat is forced to grow into a shape that is not approximately circular, Amphora has a maximum of 89 buds. Amphora spores are haploid and are released frequently into the water column. When they meet another spore, they fertilize to create an Amphora zygote, which will sink to the bottom and, if lucky, land on a suitable substrate. Growing from a single embryo to a full-sized 89-bud Amphora takes about 2 local years. Amphora prefers shallow, still ocean waters near Kupchai, but is tolerant of brackish waters too. Individuals in more turbulent water may rarely reach full size. Genetic ancestor, Numos. Scientific name, Amphora gracilis. Origin ancestry, retinal phyta. Lifespan, 8 to 10 local years. Average height, 5 centimeters. Average length, 10 centimeters in radius. Next up, we have the Night Stalker. Depicted here, a school of sea sweepers disperses as a Night Stalker targets any stragglers. Creature design by Kipzilla. The Night Stalker is a long, segmented creature with large back fins on the last 5 segments and stronger, larger fins near the front. It has a large, pointy jaw, 2 lateral eyes, 1 small medial eye, and a hook beneath the jaw made from shell. The eyes are of a kind unique to proboscis gnathids. The outer lens gathers high amounts of light, while 3 separate pupil-like structures maintain their own lenses, allowing each eye limited depth perception on its own. It flaps its back fins up and down for forward propulsion, and keeps straight with its front fins. When it swims at full speed, it is one of, if not the fastest swimmers around, at a predicted 60 kilometers per hour. Its jaw is made in 3 sections with sharp hooks inside that function as teeth that dig into prey and keep it from getting away. Its hook on the bottom of the jaw is used when the Night Stalker is in its juvenile stage to hook onto large herbivores, clear them of parasites, and protect them from predators. The Night Stalker breathes with its gill hairs that are found under the back of the segments. The Night Stalker reproduces by releasing clouds of gametes into the ocean near its breeding grounds located in the Yama-Kupchai major reef system. Here, they will come once a year in large numbers to breed. The gametes will fuse and create small eggs which will fall down to the ocean bottom where they develop and hatch. Once the eggs hatch, a small Night Stalker will emerge and swim around looking for a large herbivore which they can clean the parasites from and use as protection. In this time, they will grow to their full adult size and start hunting larger and larger prey. Night Stalkers are found throughout the ancient oceans of Almaishah and normally at depths between 140 meters and 200 meters. They do avoid the coldest polar regions. The Night Stalker is a large apex predator that actively chases its prey. It will start out by eating parasites when it is young, but slowly transition into the role of an active predator hunting down anything it can chase, catch, and eat. The Night Stalker has 3 large eyes, 1 facing anterior-dorsally and 2 facing anterior-laterally. They all have triple light detectors and are light-sensitive and able to see in the twilight of the deep ocean. Genetic ancestor, proboscis gnathed. Scientific name, Thanastodon venaturamala. Origin, Xenosegmenta. Lifespan, 11 local years. Average height, 75 centimeters. Average length, 300 centimeters. Now on to Pasayas. Some half a kilometer below the surface, a strange creature scoops up marine snow, a mix of dead flesh, zooplankton, and excrement. Its big eyes collect what little light exists, and its furry-seeming tail beats up and down to get what oxygen is to be found so far from any photosynthetic light. Creature design by Kipzilla. Pasayas has a strange mouth. It is split into 3 parts. The lower 2 parts are large pieces of skin that are able to be freely moved to catch a load of microorganisms. Its top part, however, is different. It has a large, rigid structure on top of its skin piece which acts as a frame that keeps the top part from flipping over and accidentally tearing off. It is also notable for evolving a large hairy tail. These hairs are used for breathing and gas exchange. It slowly moves its tail up and down to get the most exchange and for a bit of extra speed. Bowbird's forelimbs have evolved into large, flat wings. These make Pasayas able to float gracefully in the water and make it quite agile. The rest of its internals and externals are only slightly evolved or have stayed the same from the ancestral bowbird. Pasayas, like its ancestor, has a contest of strength to establish which one will lay eggs and which one will fertilize them. They will swim with their bellies facing each other, and then they will try to push themselves into a position above the other. After a while of staying below, the one on the bottom will give up and accept insemination from the larger or stronger organism. The less dominant organism's eggs will then be fertilized. After a few minutes, the newly gravid Pasayas will release its fertilized eggs into the ocean to drift off and grow into new Pasayas. The eggs of Pasayas are light enough to float for a long time, up to 2 weeks in the ocean. In this manner, the eggs will develop for 9 days, after which each will hatch and a small Pasayas will emerge resembling its adult form. They will immediately start hunting for plankton and other microorganisms. After a local year and a half, they will be big enough to be nearly full grown. Pasayas specializes in feeding on marine snow in the mesopelagic zone, being most common from 300 to 800 meters below the surface. On some nights, when there are large-scale spawning events from broadcast spawning organisms, they will come up near the surface to try to get extra food in the form of the gametes and embryos, but this is also the time when they are most vulnerable to being eaten by open-water predators such as Xenopristis or Night Stalkers. Pasayas can be found in the mesopelagic waters outside of the polar regions. Genetic ancestor? Bowbird. Scientific name? Walvisis pasayas. Origin? Pseudotetrapoda. Lifespan? 29 local years. Average length? 1 meter. Alright, now we have our last Kipzilla submission for the day with the wallroot. Wallroots are some of the last photosynthetic microorganisms that one can find as one approaches the mesopelagic zone of Almaishah's ancient abyssal depths. Pictured here, a stand of wallroots holds fast in the currents while a Night Stalker investigates a shoal of sea sweepers. Creature design? Again, by Kipzilla. The wallroot resembles its ancestor, Bosio magno, in many ways. One major difference is the leaves and the roots that grow differently. They grow up to 5 leaves that grow straight from the stem horizontally. They are rigid near the center, but flexible at the ends to resist the currents. They are still purple, but photosynthesis has taken the backseat. It has also grown a second set of roots that have a different function from the original underground roots. These new roots, or filter roots, are long strands that grow up to 20 centimeters and catch minerals and small organisms which they absorb into their system and use to grow bigger and stronger. The wallroot reproduces by growing roots that expand out into any direction and cling to the rocky surface with small, strong roots. After about half a meter, they will grow a small tuber from which a new plant will grow. It is able to regrow from small bits of root and tuber that are carried away by the currents and get stuck into splits in new cliffs ready to be colonized. The wallroot grows mostly isometrically and generally grows to a state where it can grow new expansion roots at the age of about 2 years. The wallroot grows on cliffs and rocks all over the ocean. There are 2 subspecies, wallroot altum and wallroot humulus. Wallroot humulus grows on cliffs beneath 150 meters deep and grows long filter roots up to 60 centimeters, while wallroot altum grows above 150 meters and grows the filter roots described above. Genetic ancestor, Bosio magno. Scientific name, Bosio muro species. Origin, retinal phyto. Lifespan, 14 local years. Average height, 33 centimeters. Alright, last but certainly not least, we come to the Warhead. The depths of Almaishah's great oceans are an alien world within an alien world, a place where the strangeness of the deep sea life is compounded by the strangeness of an alien planet. In this pitch-black place, a small metallic sphere glides through the depths weightlessly, propelled by a set of 4 small flagellum-like propellers, spaced evenly along its surface, each powered by small biological electric motors. The spherical entity resembles the deep-sea submarines and drones used by humans to explore the deepest parts of Earth's oceans. As it reaches its destination, a flow of boiling hot, smoky water rising from a deep-sea hydrothermal vent, the metallic sphere pauses for a moment before slowly entering the plume of ash-filled water and disappearing out of sight. One might assume that this device is a probe sent to collect samples of the alien environment, but the truth is, however, that it is still many millions of years until intelligent life will walk on the surface of Almaishah, much less explore her depths, and the strange spherical device is in reality a living creature. The Warhead. Creature design by Sean. The Warhead is essentially a metallic sphere covered in a set of freely spinning electrically powered propellers, which are evenly spaced across its surface. This allows it to move freely with equal force in all directions. It has dozens of evenly spaced mouths, each with a pair of small tendrils extending on either side. There is no other known example of life involving free-spinning propellers in the universe. To understand how this evolved in the Warhead, we must look at their evolutionary history. The Warhead is descended from the feather bush, which was itself descended from the fractal tree. Fractal tree locomotion was incredibly unique itself. Instead of using muscles or hydraulics for movement, the fractal tree used a system of biological electromagnets. When current ran through them, the magnets attracted each other and so caused a contraction. similar to a muscle contraction. This is already more like an electric motor than a muscle, which is powered by a series of more complex chemical reactions. However, this does not get us the free-spinning motor. For that, we must turn to the feather bush. The second stage of the feather bush's life cycle is a budding form. In this stage, several adolescent forms grow together, conjoined at the center, with their tendrils facing out. In this stage, they share nutrients with their siblings before eventually maturing and splitting off to form many adult forms. The warhead, however, never fully splits apart. Instead, it stays in this budding form for its entire life, meaning a single warhead is actually a colony of genetically identical conjoined siblings sharing resources. The warhead grows a shell around its colony made of metal and silicon, with one hole for the mouths and tentacles for each individual. Once a shell is developed, some individuals undergo major anatomical changes, losing many organs such as their digestive and reproductive systems. The body becomes like a shaft. The tendrils extend, bend, merge, and harden to become spiral-shaped, and the system of electromagnetic muscles becomes simplified. These organisms will then detach from the main body. They are, however, locked in place by the shell, still held within the superorganism, but no longer connected. The greater colony can now use their collective electricity to run currents around the disconnected individual, causing them to spin and powering the propeller. It is only thanks to the extremely unique evolutionary legacy of the fractal tree and feather bush that this form of locomotion is possible at all. The propeller individuals are not completely dead. At the base where they are connected to the center of the colony is a set of pores that can be used to communicate to the colony through hormone signals, and more importantly, as a way to absorb nutrients, which are pumped into the chamber by the colony. This allows the propeller to heal from minor damage, which it could not do if it were completely dead. The propellers also secrete an oily lubricant to aid in spinning. At the center of the colony is a brain-like structure. This originally was a clump of connecting tissue that joined the individuals, but as their functions became more intertwined, more nerves crossed this pathway until eventually it evolved into a sort of regulatory brain. This brain receives signals from the individual members of the colony through neural connections, interprets them, and issues the response. For instance, the smell of mineral-rich water being signaled by individuals on one side of the colony will cause the brain to activate the propellers on that side reflexively, and shut down the ones on the other side, making the colony travel to the resources, assuming that the colony is in need of minerals. This central brain also regulates the flow of resources and hormones to individuals and the propellers with a series of vessels and a small muscle-driven heart within the brain. Each individual is roughly pyramid-shaped, all pointing in, forming the sphere. At the end of each non-propeller individual is a small nerve ganglion that regulates that individual's function and communicates its needs and sensory inputs to the central brain. A large stomach takes up most of the body space of the individuals. The first is a chamber patched with spongy tissue that absorbs oxygen from the water, as well as absorbing minerals needed for building and maintaining its metallic components, the materials needed for chemosynthesis, and the materials needed for this beta-voltaic battery organ. The second chamber of the stomach is used for a more stomach-like purpose, digesting tiny food particles in the form of bacteria, plankton, and marine snow. This digestion provides most of the calories needed to run the non-electromagnetic functions in the body, while being supplemented by some chemosynthesis. Waste is expelled out the mouth after digesting. The beta-voltaic battery organ, which was internalized by the feather bush, has remained mostly unchanged. Each individual also possesses a gas bladder, making the warheads almost neutrally buoyant in calm water, but giving it just enough weight to be stable in the strong upward currents of the vents. This means that warheads need to expend little to no energy to float in place in such vents, and its equally spaced propellers covering the body mean it can exert force in any direction immediately to counter abrupt changes in the current, and stay stable in volatile conditions. Each individual shell plate is curved to form the shell and fuses with its neighbor's shell plates. The tendrils are used to beat food into the mouth, as well as possessing the chemoreceptors. Warheads possess a set of proteins in their tissues that allow them to not only survive temperatures ranging from the freezing -10 centigrade to boiling 110 centigrade, but also allow them to go from one extreme to the other fairly rapidly. Warheads, like most radiotrophs, can be thought of as having two parallel metabolisms: an electric metabolism that powers their motor magnet muscles and is fueled by beta-voltaic cells, and an organic metabolism that drives their other functions and is fueled by chemosynthesis and consuming food. Warheads will travel outside the plumes of hydrothermal vents to spawn in huge swarms of hundreds of colonies, once every few decades, and all non-propeller individuals in the colony will spawn. After the gametes meet, they fuse and form the microscopic larval stage, which accumulates nutrients and begins to grow immediately. This larval stage is essentially identical to the first stage of the feather bushes. It eats and grows outside until it is big enough to reach a budding stage. The bud is still identical to the feather bush bud, lacking propellers or a shell, and needing to use its tendrils as paddles. At this point, it will swim into the plumes of the vents and spend its time absorbing minerals. However, its chemosynthesis is not enough to generate enough calories to run its non-electric bodily functions, such as the brains, and so every few years, it must leave the plumes to top up its fatty supply by venturing out of the vents to feed on marine snow and plankton. In this stage, it is at its most vulnerable to predation, lacking a shell or the protection of the plumes. This back and forth process will repeat for about 100 local years before the creature finally has enough minerals to finish its shell and develop its metal propeller, at which point it will be an adult. Warheads live around volcanically active areas. Adults will spend their lives moving back and forth between eating in the open water and feeding on minerals in the plumes to maintain their metallic parts, spawning every third or fourth time they visit the open water. Warheads live around volcanically active areas. Adults will spend their lives moving back and forth between eating in the open water and feeding on minerals in the plumes to maintain their metallic parts, spawning every third or fourth visit to the open water. It may also need to travel to different plumes over its lifetime, as a warhead's home vent may cease activity over the long lifetime of the warhead. Dwelling in hydrothermal vents much of their life, they rarely interact with other creatures that can't stand the heat, and the few that can stand the heat, or the occasional predator that crosses their path outside the vents, is presented with an extremely unappetizing entity, covered in metallic armor and sharp spinning blades. Any predator would find its mouth torn apart trying to eat them. Not to mention a good portion of the warhead's body is completely inedible. The only regular form of interaction warheads have with other organisms is the interaction with microorganisms they filter feed on. Warheads need mineral-rich waters and migrate from vent to vent to obtain these minerals. Warheads form swarms above and around hydrothermal vents, but do not have any active social structure. Warhead behavior is extremely simple and pre-programmed. Their entire minds could be simulated with a few dozen lines of code. The advantage of this is that it uses few of their precious, non-electric calories. Warheads are totally blind. They can sense chemicals in the water through their chemoreceptors, as well as touch, temperature, and vibrations, and a sense of up and down. They also have an instinct to begin wildly spinning all their propellers at full speed should they feel a pressing force on opposite sides of their body simultaneously, as this sensory input correlates with being in the mouth of a predator. Genetic ancestor? Featherbush. Scientific name? Apparatus viventum cachauus. Origin? Radiotropha. Lifespan? 250 local years. Average height? 10 centimeters. Average length? 10 centimeters. Alright, thank you for watching. I've gone through all of the Discord submissions, some of the email submissions, and I think I'm actually now closing in on the end of this phase. I'm thinking that next phase is going to have some significant changes as to how these videos get made, how submissions are handled, and things like that, just to keep it a little bit more organized. I also want to say a special thank you to my editorial team, Prehistoric Game Cartridge and Saurus Blooded. These two have joined the team just in the past few weeks, and they have been helping me with doing things like data entry on the World Anvil, checking for spelling mistakes, checking for typos, and things like that. Because really, where I want to put my focus in is doing things like looking at the art, looking at the biology, and things like that. And quite frankly, that stuff has felt a lot like busy work, and so I've put it on the back burner before, and that's not really fair to the project. And it's not really fair to my fans who point out problems that I just then file in the back of my brain and maybe get to. So now I have two people who are dedicated to doing all the stuff on the World Anvil that is related to things like that, and I couldn't be more thankful. Hopefully that means I can get these out more efficiently, more quickly. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please hit like and share it. These videos could use a big boost, so please do remember to share it. If you didn't like it, hit dislike and tell me what you didn't like in the comments. Either way, I hope you subscribe and make sure to turn on all notifications so you're always notified when I post more content. I'm the Dapper Dinosaur. Thanks for watching, but before you go, I just want to say a special thank you to my channel members and my patrons, especially those pledging $20 or above. Bob Knob, Work in Progress, Benthoven, Cynically Skeptic, Denny5252, Ian Chen, John Ackerman, Landon Knoll, Yapetus, Mabdy Babdy, McSpooks, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Bede, and Patrick Dennis. As you probably know, YouTube is a very volatile platform, and from month to month my income on the channel can swing wildly. But the people you see on screen are directly supporting so that I don't have to worry too much about that, and the channel can keep going as it is, and perhaps even improving. If you'd like to join this team, there are links below to join the channel or in the description to join the Patreon. The Patreon starts as low as $1 a month, and the channel memberships start as low as $1.99 a month. On Patreon, you can even get a discount for pledging annually. If you do decide to pledge, you'll get access to an exclusive Discord server just for channel supporters, as well as early access to all of my pre-recorded videos, often up to 2 months in advance. Higher tiers will unlock even better perks. Now, if an annual or monthly pledge isn't right for you, but you still want to support the channel, there is a merch store down in the description, as well as an Amazon wishlist, just for me. And if financial support isn't something you can or want to do, then if you still want to help out the channel, please just like and share these videos and make sure you comment on them. It really helps the channel out. Thanks again for watching.